Why has Argentina, a country blessed with abundant natural resources and a rich cultural heritage, struggled to reach its full potential? Imagine a land stretched out under the broad expanse of the Southern Cross, teeming with fertile plains, the Pampas, rich in agriculture and mineral resources hidden beneath its soil. This is Argentina, a country whose early 20th century promise suggested a future among the world's leading nations. This nation's tapestry is woven with vibrant threads of cultural diversity, from the indigenous communities to the waves of European immigrants, each adding unique hues and textures to Argentine society. The tango, a dance born in the back alleys of Buenos Aires, became a global sensation, symbolizing the passionate spirit of its people. Yet, despite these gifts, Argentina has faced a labyrinth of challenges that have restrained its economic and social ascent. From fluctuating fortunes in the global market to internal political strife, the reasons are both complex and multifaceted. Join us as we delve into the pivotal events that have shaped Argentina's complex history of challenges. At the dawn of the 20th century, Argentina was one of the world's wealthiest nations. What went wrong? In the early 1900s, Argentina experienced a remarkable economic boom, fueled largely by its fertile pampas. Vast expanses of land were cultivated to meet the burgeoning demand for agricultural products, particularly beef and wheat. This era saw an influx of foreign investment primarily from Britain, which eagerly capitalized on Argentina's agricultural prowess. Railroads expanded, ports buzzed with activity, and Buenos Aires transformed into a bustling cosmopolitan city. The country was, by many accounts, on the brink of becoming a world economic leader. However, the glitter of prosperity masked underlying vulnerabilities. Argentina's economy had become precariously dependent on the export of a few agricultural commodities. While the world market's appetite for these products was insatiable in prosperous times, it left the nation exposed to global economic shifts. This over-reliance was a ticking time bomb that few acknowledged in the haze of success. The detonator came in the form of the Great Depression in the late 1920s and early 1930s. Global demand plummeted, and Argentina's export-driven economy was severely battered. Prices for beef and wheat collapsed, and the foreign capital that had once flowed freely into the country dried up almost overnight. Economic mismanagement exacerbated the crisis, as successive governments struggled to respond effectively to the rapidly changing economic landscape. This golden age set high expectations, but the seeds of future troubles were already sown. How did political turmoil contribute to Argentina's cyclical economic crises? To understand this, one must journey back to the 1930s, a pivotal decade when Argentina's political landscape began to tremble under the weight of military coups. The country saw its democratic fabric stretch and tear as the military intervened repeatedly in its governance, setting a precedent for instability. This era was marked by the rise of authoritarian regimes that prioritized immediate control over long-term economic strategies, leading to a cycle of economic policies that were as short-lived as the governments themselves. As the 1940s dawned, Argentina welcomed a charismatic and controversial figure, Juan Perón, who initially came to power in 1946. Perón's presidency was a double-edged sword. On one hand, he implemented populist policies that aimed to empower the working class, enhancing his popularity and reshaping the social structure of the nation. On the other, his approach stirred significant unrest among the military and the elite, who saw his policies as a threat to their interests. Perón's administration was characterized by an ambitious agenda that included nationalizing key industries, increasing wages, and expanding social welfare programs. However, these initiatives led to rampant inflation and a drain on the country's reserves. The economic backlash was swift and severe, exacerbated by Perón's increasingly authoritarian rule, which alienated many sectors of society. By the time Perón was overthrown in 1955, Argentina was deeply divided and economically weakened. The subsequent years saw a revolving door of leaders, each with their own economic ideologies and policies. This frequent change in leadership prevented the development of a coherent, long-term economic strategy, leaving the country vulnerable to external shocks and internal dissent. The political instability created a fertile ground for social unrest, which further deterred investment and economic growth. The oscillation between different ideologies and leaders meant that no policy had enough time to mature and produce stable economic benefits. With each change in government came shifts in policy, none providing the stability Argentina desperately needed. By the late 20th century, Argentina was spiraling into a severe economic crisis. What triggered this downfall? The roots of this economic turmoil can be traced back to the 1970s and 1980s, a period marked by a series of risky financial decisions. During this time, Argentina's government, swayed by short-term economic gains, started heavy borrowing from international markets. This debt was intended to stimulate rapid industrial growth and stabilize the economy, which was reeling under the pressures of inflation and political instability. Initially, these loans provided a temporary uplift in economic conditions, but the relief was short-lived. As the global economy shifted, interest rates rose steeply, and Argentina found itself grappling with increasingly unmanageable debt repayments. The situation was exacerbated by rampant fiscal mismanagement. Government spending continued unabated, with little regard for the ballooning deficit. Corruption and inefficiency within state-managed sectors bled the economy further, leading to an unsustainable fiscal environment. Enter the 1990s, and Argentina attempted to stabilize its currency through a peg to the US dollar, an effort to curb hyperinflation and restore economic confidence. However, this created an artificial sense of stability. The rigid currency peg made Argentine exports more expensive on the global market, leading to a significant trade deficit. As the government continued to borrow to fund its deficit, the national debt soared. The culmination of these misguided policies and external pressures came to a head in 2001, when Argentina defaulted on its debt, the largest default in history at the time. International creditors and the International Monetary Fund had been key players, extending loans in hopes of economic reform. However, the inability to meet debt obligations led to a cessation of further aid and investment. The default triggered a profound financial crisis, with banks freezing accounts and the economy plunging into a deep recession. The impact was devastating. Unemployment and poverty rates skyrocketed, protests erupted nationwide, and the country cycled through 5 presidents in just 2 weeks. The social fabric of Argentina was stretched to its breaking point. Argentina's dance with debt ended in a dramatic economic collapse, affecting millions of lives. In recent years, Argentina has continued to face significant challenges. Are they echoes of the past? Argentina's contemporary landscape is marked by a seemingly relentless inflation rate. This economic phenomenon isn't merely a policy failure of the moment, but a persistent shadow that has loomed over the nation for decades. Historically, inflation has been a cyclical beast in Argentina, driven by a combination of excessive money printing and fiscal deficits. Today, despite various attempts at stabilization, prices continue to soar, eroding the purchasing power of the average Argentine and fueling social discontent. Corruption, too, has woven itself deeply into the fabric of Argentine society. From the days of the military junta to the democratic era, corruption has undermined trust in public institutions. The infamous notebook scandal revealed an extensive network of bribery, involving high-ranking officials and prominent business leaders, suggesting that corruption is not an aberration, but a systemic issue that has plagued Argentina for generations. Political fragmentation has further complicated the landscape. The country's political scene remains sharply divided, a reflection of deep-seated ideological battles that trace back to the mid-20th century. These divisions often result in legislative paralysis, making it exceedingly difficult to implement consistent, long-term policies that could address the structural issues at hand. As we look at these enduring challenges, it's clear that they are not isolated incidents, but part of a broader historical continuum. The past not only echoes in the present but often dictates the tune to which the future dances. What can the world learn from Argentina's tumultuous journey through economic and political strife? Argentina, a land of rich cultural heritage and vast natural resources, once stood on the brink of becoming one of the world's leading economies. The early 20th century saw Argentina as a beacon of economic promise, a titan in the making with its booming agricultural exports and burgeoning industrial sector. Yet this promise was not to be fully realized. The roots of Argentina's struggles are deeply entwined with its political instability. Over the decades, the nation has seen a dizzying array of military coups, short-lived governments, and populist policies. Each change in governance brought with it a shift in economic direction, which often disrupted long-term planning and eroded investor confidence. The lack of continuity in leadership and policies has made it incredibly challenging to maintain a steady course for economic prosperity. Enter the debt crisis. The tale of Argentina's financial woes is marked by its heavy borrowing habits. In the late 20th century, Argentina became heavily indebted, leading to a catastrophic economic collapse in 2001. This crisis left millions in poverty and cast a long shadow over the nation's financial systems, from which it is still struggling to emerge. Today, Argentina faces contemporary challenges that echo the past. Economic stagnation, high inflation, and persistent social inequalities are stark reminders of unresolved issues. The shadows of previous failures loom large, affecting not just economic policies but the everyday lives of Argentinians. From Argentina's journey, there are broader lessons to be learned. The importance of stable governance cannot be overstated. A stable political environment fosters economic growth, attracts investment, and builds public trust. Economic diversification is equally critical. Over-reliance on a few sectors can lead to vulnerability to global market shifts. Lastly, the integrity of institutions, ensuring they are strong, transparent, and independent, supports a foundation upon which a nation can build lasting prosperity. Understanding Argentina's historical challenges offers valuable insights, not just for Argentinians, but for any nation striving for prosperity amidst adversity. Reflecting on Argentina's past, the world can gain perspective on the critical interplay of governance, economy, and societal health, and perhaps steer towards more resilient and equitable futures.